Friendship is often celebrated as a space of comfort, trust, and ease. Yet beneath that familiar surface lies a landscape of vulnerability that many of us are reluctant to explore. At the heart of hidden feelings in friendship is the fear of exposing ourselves, our insecurities, our needs, our doubts, because we worry that doing so might alter the dynamic we value so dearly. Vulnerability in this sense is both the foundation of intimacy and the source of anxiety. We fear that revealing too much will invite judgment, rejection, or distance, so we tuck our deeper emotions into quiet corners, hoping that silence will protect the friendship while leaving our inner world undisclosed. This fear is not irrational. Friendships, though emotionally rewarding, are delicate systems of mutual expectation, trust, and reciprocity. When one person shares a fear, an insecurity, or a longing, it disrupts the equilibrium, however subtly. The act of exposing a hidden emotion carries risk. It might be received with misunderstanding, dismissed, or, even worse, alter the way the other person perceives us. And so we remain guarded, our feelings locked behind polite smiles, casual conversation, and the easy laughter that hides discomfort. But this self-protection, while understandable, also limits the depth of connection we can experience. Psychologically, the fear of vulnerability in friendship taps into a very basic human instinct: the need to be safe within social bonds. Friendships are not only about companionship, they are about survival in a social sense. Historically, being ostracized from a group carried consequences, sometimes literally life-threatening ones. Today, the stakes are less immediate, but the emotional wiring remains. Exposing a raw, unfiltered part of ourselves can feel as dangerous as stepping onto a precipice, because it requires us to risk a part of our social belonging. This is why even the closest friendships often operate with unspoken boundaries, carefully maintained to protect both individuals from discomfort. Yet vulnerability is paradoxical. It is precisely what creates intimacy. By withholding our fears, we inadvertently erect barriers, leaving our friendships functional but shallow. It is in the acknowledgement of our insecurities, the admission of loneliness, self-doubt, or fear of inadequacy, that we invite empathy, trust, and authentic connection. True friends respond not with judgment, but with recognition, understanding, and presence. The courage to expose these hidden layers transforms friendship from a surface-level companionship into a deep, resilient bond that can weather misunderstandings, distance, and life's inevitable challenges. The fear of vulnerability also manifests in subtle ways. Perhaps we avoid expressing dissatisfaction with certain behaviors, fearing confrontation. Maybe we downplay our need for support, worried about burdening the friend. We may even suppress admiration or affection because it feels too much or might create imbalance. These small acts of self-restraint are protective mechanisms designed to preserve the friendship, but they can accumulate into a sense of emotional distance. Over time, unspoken fears and withheld feelings can quietly shape the relationship, creating tension that is difficult to articulate because it has never been named. What is remarkable, however, is how often these fears are based on assumption rather than reality. We imagine negative consequences that rarely materialize. Friends are often more receptive, understanding, and empathetic than we anticipate. By daring to express vulnerability, we offer them the opportunity to respond authentically, which often strengthens the connection rather than threatening it. The act of sharing hidden fears becomes an invitation to mutual trust, a declaration that the relationship is valued enough to risk discomfort for the sake of truth. Philosophically, this dynamic touches on a fundamental truth about human relationships. Connection requires both courage and humility. Courage to expose the hidden corners of our psyche. Humility to accept that the friend may respond differently than we imagine. It is a delicate dance of reciprocity, requiring sensitivity and attentiveness. Yet the payoff is profound. Vulnerability transforms friendships from transactional or habitual interactions into spaces where the human experience, its beauty, fragility, and complexity, is fully witnessed and honored. So, If we are to navigate the hidden feelings that shape our friendships, we must begin by acknowledging our fear of vulnerability. We must recognize that the act of sharing insecurities, doubts, or needs is not a threat, but a bridge to deeper connection. Begin with small admissions, a concern, a hesitation, a personal truth that matters to you. Notice how your friend responds, and allow that experience to guide further openness. Over time, these moments of courageous honesty create a relational culture where both parties feel safe to reveal their inner world. Ultimately, the fear of vulnerability is not an obstacle to friendship, it is a sign of its potential. It signals the importance of the bond, the value we place on connection, and the depth of our emotional investment. By acknowledging and gently confronting this fear, we transform hidden feelings from sources of tension into pathways for intimacy. Vulnerability, once embraced, becomes the secret strength of friendship, the invisible force that allows connection to flourish in its most authentic, enduring, and profoundly human form. Even in the closest friendships, where trust and loyalty are assumed, there exists a quiet undercurrent of emotion that many of us hesitate to name: jealousy. It is one of those feelings that feels almost taboo to admit, yet it is profoundly human. We might experience a flicker of envy when our friend achieves something we desire, gains attention or recognition, or enters a relationship that fills a space we secretly hope to occupy. These emotions do not necessarily reflect malice or ill will. They are often subtle, nuanced, and interwoven with admiration, longing, and insecurity. But because they are socially uncomfortable, we tend to bury them, pretending that they do not exist, even though they quietly shape our behavior and our experience of the friendship. Jealousy in friendship is rarely a conscious choice. It often arises as an automatic emotional response, one that signals our attachment and our fear of loss. The closer we feel to someone, the more their successes, joys, and attention can provoke feelings of comparison or inadequacy. We measure ourselves, sometimes unconsciously, against their trajectory or accomplishments. This is not a flaw. It is a reflection of the human mind's tendency to define self-worth relationally. Our friends, in essence, become mirrors, reflecting both our aspirations and our insecurities. Recognizing this is the first step toward understanding the hidden layers of emotional complexity in friendship. The way jealousy manifests is subtle and often internalized. We might feel irritation when a friend is praised, a pang of sadness when they share time with someone else, or a quiet longing for their attention. Because these feelings are socially uncomfortable, we often disguise them through humor, detachment, or distraction. We may overcompensate by praising them excessively or minimizing our own desires. In doing so, we create a private emotional landscape that is rich, conflicted, and sometimes confusing because the surface of the friendship appears calm and unaffected, while underneath, subtle tensions are at play. Philosophically, unspoken jealousy reminds us that friendships are not free of the human condition. They exist in a space where love, admiration, fear, and longing coexist. To feel jealous is to acknowledge that we value the friendship deeply and that we care about our place within it. The challenge lies not in eradicating jealousy. It cannot and should not be suppressed entirely, but in observing it without letting it corrode trust or intimacy. Emotional honesty, even with ourselves, is critical. Understanding the root of these feelings, whether it is insecurity, desire for recognition, or fear of displacement, allows us to navigate them constructively rather than reactively. Jealousy is also closely tied to comparison, which is often the silent companion of friendship. When a friend achieves a milestone we aspire to, it can trigger reflection on our own perceived shortcomings. In this way, jealousy is not merely about the friend, it is about the self. It is a lens through which we view our own needs, ambitions, and unmet desires. Recognizing this allows us to transform envy from a source of tension into an instrument for self-awareness and personal growth. By examining what sparks these feelings, we gain insight into our own aspirations and values, and we can respond with reflection rather than judgment. Unspoken jealousy can subtly affect the dynamics of friendship. It may influence how often we reach out, the way we respond to our friends' successes, or even our ability to fully celebrate their achievements. If left unexamined, it can create distance, misunderstanding, or resentment. Yet, when acknowledged with care, It can deepen intimacy. Confessing to a trusted friend that you struggled with envy or exploring your own feelings honestly can strengthen trust and foster a more authentic connection. Vulnerability in this context is transformative, converting a potentially destructive emotion into a shared human experience. It is important to differentiate between destructive jealousy and the quiet, reflective awareness of envy. Destructive jealousy drives competition, criticism, or resentment. It isolates and undermines. But reflective awareness allows us to recognize the emotion, understand its origins, and respond with clarity. It invites humility and self-compassion, the acknowledgement that our feelings, however uncomfortable, are part of being human. It also invites empathy toward the friend, allowing us to celebrate their success without diminishing our own value. Ultimately, the presence of jealousy and competition in friendship is not a sign of weakness. It is a testament to the depth of care and attachment that exists. The friendships we cherish most are those that challenge us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, including the quiet desires and insecurities we rarely admit. By bringing awareness to these hidden emotions, we transform them from sources of tension into opportunities for growth, authenticity, and deeper relational intimacy. So, if you want to navigate the hidden currents of jealousy in friendship, start by observing your feelings without judgment. Notice when envy arises, explore its roots, and differentiate between destructive comparison and reflective insight. Consider sharing your experiences with your friend when appropriate, allowing honesty to deepen trust rather than fracture it. Because it is only by confronting the emotions we are afraid to admit that we can cultivate friendships that are resilient, honest, and profoundly meaningful. Jealousy, when recognized and understood, becomes not a threat to connection, but a doorway to greater self-awareness and authentic relational intimacy. Friendship, at its core, is a mirror of our emotional lives. In this reflective space, one of the most subtle yet powerful hidden feelings we carry is admiration, and often, intertwined with it, a quiet desire for validation. We may rely on a friend in ways we hesitate to admit, appreciate them more deeply than we express, or crave their recognition and acknowledgement without ever saying so. These emotions are delicate because they reveal dependence, longing, or emotional need, which can feel risky to articulate. Yet, it is precisely this unspoken layer of emotional truth that shapes the texture and resilience of friendship. Admiration in friendship is multifaceted. We may admire a friend's achievements, their intelligence, their courage, or even the ease with which they navigate life. This admiration is not envy. It is a recognition of qualities we value, qualities that may also reflect our own aspirations. Yet, when unexpressed, admiration can become an internalized longing. We appreciate the person, yet we do not always articulate it, fearing it might seem excessive, awkward, or even create imbalance in the relationship. There is a paradox here. The very feeling that binds us emotionally is often the one we conceal most carefully. Closely connected to admiration is the desire for validation, the wish to be seen, recognized, and appreciated in return. In friendship, this is a quiet, almost imperceptible current. We want our presence, our efforts, and our inner selves to matter to the friend we hold dear. Perhaps we hope that they notice our growth, understand our struggles, or acknowledge our loyalty. This longing for acknowledgement is natural and deeply human. It signals that we seek connection not merely in shared activities or conversation, but in the recognition of our existence and our emotional contributions. What makes these hidden feelings particularly complex is their vulnerability. Expressing admiration or need for validation can feel exposing because it creates a moment of uncertainty. Will the friend respond with equal warmth, understanding, or reciprocation? Will they perceive our emotions as excessive, needy, or even burdensome? The stakes feel high because friendship, unlike familial obligation or romantic partnership, is elective. It is chosen, and that choice can feel contingent. For this reason, many of us keep these feelings beneath the surface, hoping that the bond itself communicates our affection and appreciation implicitly. Yet, withholding these emotions carries consequences. When admiration and the need for validation remain unspoken, we risk creating an internal tension that can subtly influence the friendship. We may downplay our own achievements to avoid appearing competitive, overcompensate with humor, or suppress expressions of affection. Over time, these unspoken currents can lead to a quiet sense of incompleteness or imbalance, not because the friendship lacks depth, but because vital emotional truths are not acknowledged. Acknowledging these feelings, carefully and thoughtfully, can transform the friendship in profound ways. Expressing admiration, even in small ways, reinforces the bond, reminding the friend that they are seen, appreciated, and valued. It strengthens mutual understanding because it communicates emotional truth rather than assuming it is understood. Similarly, allowing oneself to seek or accept validation from a friend cultivates honesty, openness, and reciprocity. It invites the friend to meet us where we are, emotionally, and to engage in a shared acknowledgement of the relational space we inhabit together. Philosophically, these hidden feelings highlight the interdependence at the heart of meaningful human connection. Friendship is not a static exchange of favors or companionship. It is a living dialogue of attention, recognition, and emotional presence. Admiration and the desire for validation are signals that we are attuned to one another's inner lives, that we value the relational dynamic, and that we are willing to invest emotionally in ways that transcend casual interaction. These feelings, when brought into consciousness and expressed with care, enrich the emotional fabric of the friendship, deepening intimacy while preserving respect and autonomy. It is important to note that expressing these feelings does not require grand gestures or declarations. Often, subtle acknowledgement, a thoughtful compliment, a note of gratitude, or a moment of attentive listening can communicate admiration and validation more authentically than overt statements. The key is presence, being attuned to the friend's impact on our emotional world and willing to convey, however gently, the significance of their presence in our lives. Ultimately, the hidden feelings of admiration and the desire for validation remind us that friendship is a dialogue of hearts, not merely a series of shared experiences. They invite reflection on our own needs, vulnerabilities, and the ways we value those closest to us. By acknowledging these feelings, both inwardly and outwardly, we cultivate friendships that are honest, resilient, and emotionally rich. Relationships in which both individuals are not only seen and appreciated, but allowed to flourish together. So, if you want to honor the subtle but powerful currents that shape your friendships, pay attention to the feelings you hesitate to admit. Notice the admiration, the longing for recognition, and the quiet dependence that may be shaping your experience. Find moments to express them authentically without fear or expectation. In doing so, you transform hidden emotions from silent burdens into bridges of understanding, creating friendships that are not only enduring but profoundly alive, anchored in the invisible yet deeply felt currents of human connection. Even in the closest and most enduring friendships, there is often a shadow we carry quietly: guilt, resentment, or regret. These are the feelings we are most afraid to admit, not because they are inherently shameful, but because articulating them risks conflict, discomfort, or the unraveling of a bond we hold dear. We carry a mental ledger of moments when we failed to act as we wished, words we didn't speak, or boundaries we may have crossed, and this internalized tension subtly shapes how we experience the friendship. These emotions are rarely voiced, yet they are powerful, quietly influencing our behavior, our responses, and our sense of closeness. Guilt in friendship is particularly complex. It can arise from something as simple as missing an important event, failing to provide support in a critical moment, or even neglecting the little gestures that convey care. Unlike romantic partnerships, where expectations are often explicitly negotiated, friendships tend to operate with implicit standards. We assume a level of presence, empathy, and attentiveness that is rarely discussed. And when we feel we fall short, guilt can take root. It becomes an unspoken weight, a reminder that the bond is precious but fragile, and that our own behavior has not always lived up to the implicit ideals we hold. Resentment, on the other hand, often arises from unmet expectations, perceived slights, or the subtle accumulation of frustrations over time. Unlike anger, which is acute and often expressed, resentment is quiet, simmering beneath the surface. We may feel it toward a friend for prioritizing others, for inadvertently dismissing our needs, or for habits that clash with our emotional rhythm. Resentment is insidious precisely because it is unspoken. It is an emotion that feeds on silence, growing quietly until it shapes our perception of the friend and the friendship itself. Regret is intertwined with both guilt and resentment. It represents reflection on what might have been, moments when we acted differently, choices we wish we had made, or opportunities for intimacy or honesty that we let slip away. Regret is forward and backward-looking simultaneously. It weighs on the past while influencing our present interactions. It can manifest as hesitation, emotional distance, or overcompensation, subtly shaping the texture of the friendship without ever being named. Philosophically, these hidden emotions reveal the ethical and relational complexity inherent in friendship. Friends are bound not only by shared experiences but by moral and emotional obligations that are often unwritten. Guilt, resentment, and regret are signals that we care deeply, that we recognize the importance of our own actions and the impact they have on another person. They are, in a sense, the conscience of the friendship, a silent reminder that connection is not merely about convenience or shared interests, but about responsibility, attentiveness, and integrity. The danger, of course, is that these emotions, if left unexamined or unarticulated, can erode the bond subtly. Silent guilt can become overcompensation, where we give inauthentically or excessively in an attempt to make up for perceived shortcomings. Unspoken resentment can create distance or passive-aggressive behavior, poisoning interactions without ever being directly addressed. Regret can trap us in a cycle of self-reproach, preventing us from fully engaging in the present or appreciating the friend as they are now. Awareness, reflection, and careful communication are essential to prevent these hidden feelings from undermining the very connection we wish to preserve. Addressing these emotions requires courage, humility, and discernment. It begins with introspection, noticing when guilt, resentment, or regret arises, and understanding its source. Then comes the delicate art of expression. This does not mean airing every grievance or burdening the friend with every pang of conscience. Rather, it means identifying the moments where careful, honest communication can strengthen the bond. Acknowledging past missteps, expressing a need for understanding, or clarifying expectations can transform latent tension into deeper connection. The act of articulating these emotions, when done with care and empathy, often produces relief for both parties, replacing silent strain with shared understanding. Importantly, these hidden feelings also offer a profound opportunity for growth, both personal and relational. Guilt teaches accountability, prompting us to notice how our actions affect others. Resentment highlights boundaries and values, signaling where mutual understanding may need reinforcement. Regret provides insight into our own emotional needs, revealing desires and vulnerabilities that we may otherwise overlook. By attending to these emotions, we deepen self-awareness and cultivate a more ethical, empathetic approach to friendship. Ultimately, the presence of guilt, resentment, and regret is not a sign of failure. It is a reflection of investment, care, and relational depth. Friendships that endure are not those free of tension or unspoken feelings, but those in which these emotions are recognized, reflected upon, and addressed thoughtfully. The most resilient friendships embrace honesty, not just in moments of joy, but in the quiet, difficult truths that are often hardest to admit. So, if you wish to navigate the hidden feelings that shape your friendships, begin by acknowledging what you have avoided: the guilt, the resentment, the regrets. Observe them without judgment, reflect on their origins, and discern which can be expressed constructively. Approach your friend with honesty and empathy, transforming these silent burdens into opportunities for understanding, reconciliation, and intimacy. It is in confronting the emotions we fear to admit that friendships are truly strengthened, evolving from companionship into a profound, resilient bond that honors both the joy and the complexity of human connection.